Also with me is Emma Gatti, who is the editor of Space Watch Global. Thank you for hanging on there, Emma. And I think it was nice to get a sense of what was going on in that room from Nomia Iqbal. I wonder if you could just define or clarify one thing for us. We heard time and time again that there was no extraterrestrial origin to UAPs. Is there space for us to define what a UAP is and what we mean by extraterrestrial?
It's a good question. This is a complex question. So I think what they're trying to achieve is actually how you define something as a UAP. Because what they made very clear is that we don't know what we are not finding. They know what is normal, they know what is conventional, but they don't know what they're looking for. They made a very good example about the famous needle in the haystack, and they say our machines are trained to find the needle if we know how it looks like. But if we don't know how it looks like, we don't know what we're doing. So their technique is quite interesting, scientifically speaking. Instead of searching for the needle in the haystack, they're trying to isolate all the thousands of hays, exclude them, and see if the famous needle kind of emerges by itself, which is a very intelligent approach, in my opinion. So it's difficult to define something that is per se unidentified, and plus, as we heard during the press conference, we have so little evidence, so little data about how those unidentified anomalies look like that we literally don't know how to define them. What I can tell you is that so far, the majority of these UAPs were weather balloons, were drones, were airplanes. When we speak about extraterrestrial life, then this is the second question, it becomes a bit more complicated because, of course, the most basic answer that I can give you is that it's something that was not born on Earth, or that presents some life and organic characteristics that are not Earthbound. This can be anything from its physical appearance, from its chemical component, fundamentally.
Emma, obviously, you watch stories like this very closely. I think that a lot of members of the public would have learned something new in terms of the fact that NASA are so open with their data. Have you ever accessed those databases, and just how useful is that data?
So I think it's important for the member of the public to understand what do we mean for data and how we use them in terms of scientific community. So NASA has thousands of satellites, telescopes up in the air, and each one of these tools, each one of these sensors measures something different. And this something can be CO2, can be methane, can be salinity in the ocean, can be wildfires, can be plants. Okay, so many parameters. Each sensor is tailored to measure that parameter. So we don't have a kind of general satellite spying on us and measuring everything. Each satellite is sending a certain type of data, and this data is tailored to the mission. And when we speak about satellites above Earth, they're usually bonded to Earth goals. So they can be like weather forecasting, earthquakes, volcanoes, monitor of hazards, a kind of like broad series of goals. So, and all those data, all these observations can be sent back to Earth and then processed to follow a certain question. It's very difficult to give an answer about the data because it's a bit like if you're asking me if I go to the doctor to ask for a blood test for everything. So when you go to the doctor, you explain what's your problem, and the doctor will give you a blood test for that problem. So nobody in the scientific community collects random data for open questions. So if you ask me about the question, I can give you an answer. But like that, I think it's important to explain to the public how NASA and in general, how Earth observation work. So they're tailored to a specific question.
All right, well, on the subject of data, Emma, there are some key incidents that people are very aware of. One of those, of course, is Roswell, and we know so much about Area 51. I was having a look at some of the main UFO or UAP incidents, and it was mapped out on a GIS database. Most of them are in the United States. I mean, just how credible is that?
Again, that's where we enter the folklore areas. This is where we enter those kind of sensationalists. This is why I believe NASA is also doing this thing, is trying to clean up the air and propose a clean scientific approach to try to answer a question that we don't even know if it's actually a real question. We don't even know if we're really having something to search. When we come to speak about Area 51, UFOs, images, I struggle a lot to give you an answer simple because I never found any of those evidence scientifically compelling, to be fair.
Yeah, and of course we won't even go with the abductions, but just on a final note, there was a very clear definition of the team that made up this committee, so to speak. Were there any notable members there that grabbed your interest?
Well, David Sperger is a kind of star, is a Hollywood star of the field, is an incredible famous astrophysicist. I think he's at Princeton. So he's a man that had, I don't know how many publications, so definitely a very high profile. But I think I wanted to, if you allow me, I wanted to specify something about the harassment, because it's a word that has been said a lot during the press conference. And I think maybe it's not clear for the member of the general public what the scientific community mean for that. In general, this area of research is considered by scientific community as a sort of area where you don't want to go because you risk your scientific credibility. So a lot of scientists, and I believe also the director, the unnamed director, don't want to be associated with this type of topics because they believe that they will be discredited, they will not be taken serious within the scientific community. So I think part of the NASA process also try to normalize all this topic, transform it in a very normal scientific topic so that researchers, scientists can approach it in a more relaxed way.
Okay, and certainly there was reference to the James Webb telescope and the galaxies and the data coming back from that. So I suppose it's in their interest to normalise it and to open out this idea that we're not alone. Emma Gatti, editor of Space Watch Global, thank you very much indeed for your time and your expertise on this subject. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
You have been watching BBC News.